Welcome back to the channel. We're on book 2 of the 2025 reading challenges. And before I get into the book that you see off to my side, I'd first like to just ask for your guys to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notifications, get updates when new videos come up, and leave a comment or two. So with that being said, this second book is Anne McCaffrey's The Chronicles of Pern, First Fall. This is made up of 4 novellas, novellas. They're not really short stories except the first one. And the first one we talked about a little bit in the last video, which is the Survey of Pern. And that's where the expedition crew goes down, and they spend 5 days on the planet just trying to see if it's a hospitable planet, if they can colonize it. And they decide that, yes, they can. They can colonize it, and it happens about 100 years later that they come back, and that's where Dragon's Dawn comes in. And then after Dragon's Dawn ends, then this book picks up with The Dolphin's Bell, the first tale, the first story in this, the second story in this book, which goes back to the evacuation of landing, but not from the perception of the Dragon Riders. This is more of the Dolphins, who we heard about in Dragon's Dawn, but didn't really get much info about them. But it's the Dolphins and how they're helping the ships take everything from landing to fort during the volcano that is going. So it's taking place around the same time as Crossing in Dragon's Dawn. The third story is the Ford of Red Hanrahan, which is Sorga's dad. He creates his own stake, and on his way there, he comes across a ford that it rained like a lot before he got there. The ford was high, and it becomes really treacherous to pass. Basically, what he's trying to do is he wants to breed racehorses, is what he wants to do. And he is a vet. He did works a lot with animals, and he didn't really want to deal with livestock. That's already people were doing that, so he didn't want to really do that. He wanted to breed racehorses. So he said, that's what I'm going to do on this stake. And they cut out all these caves because of the thread, which basically eats up anything that is basically animal, mineral, or person. They start to live in caves now, and this is kind of the adventure of Red Hanrahan, basically getting across the ford into his new hold, which he calls Bendon's Hold, which was the admiral who led the landing to Pern. So there's a touching moment for all the characters there that, it couldn't have been named any better. So there was that story. Next, there was the second Weir, which dealt with the Dragon Riders, and they all basically lived in the same cave. You had a bunch of them, a couple hundred Dragon Riders actually, all living in the same cave system, and it was to the point where it was just too crowded, too cramped. The newer Dragon Riders were wanting spots of their own, and this is where we learn actually where leaders and where women are chosen for the new Weir area. And the way it's done is the woman who is riding the gold dragon that's closest to what they call clutch, or being in heat, becomes the Weir woman. and she basically she doesn't get to choose who her mate's going to be. The dragon chooses, because during the clutch it becomes a battle of the male dragons trying to catch and have intercourse with the gold dragon. And we see Melhal, which is actually Michael, Sorka and Sean's son. He's vying for that spot, and he knows he can't really get it on his own. He can't rely on his parents for that. So Taurine, who is the rider of the Gold Dragon, that's who he has his eyes set on, and that's what he wants her for one. He wants to be Wear Leader, but he wants her as well. So we learn that Sean says, okay, yeah, we're crowded. We're going to do a second one here. We've already kind of worked that one out. We're going to do a third one here, and then we're eventually going to do a fourth one. So we see what happens with the clutch. That's happening at the new Weir, which is Bendon Weir. That it becomes a free-for-all, really, of who can get to the gold dragon first. And I'm not going to tell you who does, because if you want to read it, I don't want to ruin the surprise, but it's an interesting scene, and it's done I think very well. She talks about passion and the sensuality and the sexuality, but it's not overt. It's not too much, so it's actually okay. And that was actually a good story. The last story, and I'll be doing this one again in probably the next video because I have a special edition of it, is Rescue Run. And this is where a descendant of Admiral Paul Bendon, he's on a ship. They're basically just going through motions, looking at planets and trying to pick up beacons and seeing if there's anything going on out there. And as they're coming across P.E.R.N, they see an orange flag, and they have the Mayday that Ted Tuberman sent out on his own, well, with some help, but saying that they were being attacked by an alien organism, which was Thread. He doesn't say Thread, but he puts that in there. And they decide, okay, we're going to put our own expedition crew in there, and Paul Bendon's descendant is one of them. And as they come down, they're looking for anything, really. They find a beacon, and the beacon belongs to somebody who's not all that good at all. At least I don't think. I mean, he goes back to Dragon's Dawn, and he was scheming then as he basically schemes now. Kimmer, he basically tries to convince them, one, that nobody has survived P.E.R.N. They're the only ones left. Him and the descendants of Kenjo Fujiyoshi, and his own daughters, and the sons of Kenjo and Kimmer's daughters. They're the only ones who survived P.E.R.N. Everybody else is dead. There's no others. There's no signals. There's nothing coming from anywhere. So this story really is about kind of that, and how Kimmer has become sort of, he's an old man, probably not all there, wanting to get off the planet, but he wants to bring all the gems, all the diamonds, all the gold, everything that he found on P.E.R.N. But they can only bring so much back with them to go back on to the Amherst, which is the main big ship. The Erica, which is the sort of shuttle ship, can only carry so much. and they're told you can only bring 23.5 kilograms with you, and that's it. That's max. And they're basically trying to figure out how they can store more on there. The way this story ends is, we don't know. They don't find any other signs of life. It does say that there's a fisherman who hears the thing, that the shuttle going off, but he's just trying to stay warm. So he doesn't really pay much attention. But outside of that, we don't know if there were any other survivors. I mean, obviously there's more books. And I mean, these were kind of written after, obviously, the beginning of the series. This was basically the beginning, the genesis of P.E.R.N. Or the colony of P.E.R.N. And we know that there are more books that extend beyond what these books do in terms of chronological order. It's just, when do we find out that there are more people, more survivors? So this is basically the way that the first pass ends. It's basically they've had 50 years without threat, so you've got about another 200 years before the next threat. And that will take into the second pass, which I will be going there soon, and I'm looking forward to that because I like this one too. It wasn't as fast moving as Dragon's Dawn, but again, this was like 5 different stories, where Dragon's Dawn was a big story separated into 3 parts. So it was like 3 stories, but it was all together, where the Chronicles here is more of, again, novellas, different stories, different times, different characters. So, but I liked it. I gave it a 5-star on Goodreads. I recommend it. I recommend the series so far because I like it. I'm doing it in chronological order, just the way I like to do it. But yeah, I would give it a 5 stars on Goodreads, and I would recommend it. Good book. So with that, again, you'd be doing me a big favor if you like the video. Subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think of this series, if you've read it, if you've read this book, anything I've missed. I'd love to hear from you, and we can maybe start up a discussion thread. I'm always up for that, as always. Keep YouTube literate. Until next time, God bless.